Today, I'm really excited to have Laxmi Khanal as our guest for today's episode. If you can't tell yet by the name, we are sisters. She's my sister. Agile runs in our family. So Laxmi started her career as a Agile business analyst and went on and became a Scrum Master. She's with Mayo Clinic currently as a Scrum Master, and I know they absolutely love her there. She comes with a solid Agile mindset, and I've seen her work so hard to have that mindset she has. Whenever we're together, our conversations at home are about Agile and Scrum and all these different things that organizations face. So I'm really excited to have this one recorded so that all of you can hear and learn from her. With that, Laxmi, thanks for coming into the Agile Coach Podcast. Welcome.
Yeah, good to be here. Thanks for having me. I hope we don't confuse the audience on who's who. People say our voices and faces are very similar.
I know. We don't think so, but other people do. But we like it. It's all good. With that, anything else you would like to add about yourself that I missed that you want the audience to know?
No, I think you covered it. We can dive right into the questions.
Cool. Well, I know it's very exciting to work with Mayo. I don't know that many people that work with Mayo, so I just want to hear what's it like working with Mayo as a Scrum Master?
Yeah. So as you said, I'm a Scrum Master for Mayo Clinic currently. I'm leading two teams within the data analytics side of things. Mayo is very early in their journey of, digital and agile transformation. So when I got bought in, the teams were in the very early stage of forming. The team that I work with, they all kind of fall into the different spectrum in their understanding of Agile and just overall the team maturity. They've had maybe some of the practices down, but they didn't have a good grasp on what core understanding of Agile and Scrum is like. So over the past few months that I've been with both of my teams, I've had to play a role of a teacher and help them understand the value behind why we do each of the ceremonies, but at the same time, really working with the team members in an individual basis and try to understand their experiences and what has their experience with Agile and Scrum has been like, and just trying to mold them together to solve problems and make decision as a team. There was a lot of silo in the way they did work, and obviously the leadership said, hey, we want to move from doing project-based model to product-based. And so our sprint reviews are highly engaging. The team gets to collaborate with hospital leaders and hear different pinpoints. We actually have a business analyst from the clinic side who comes into our refinement. And what I've seen is it just really helps the team to have insight into the patient journey when they first, come into the hospital and, when they get discharged. And it just really helps the team to focus on understanding the problem. And I've seen as a result of, having the stakeholders, having these hospital leaders in our refinement session and as part of sprint review, it just really helps to drive these conversations to better serve them ultimately. So it's really rewarding in a lot of ways, I would say.
Yeah, because I've heard there's some physicians and stuff in the room, they're doctors in the room in some meetings. So that's kind of cool, because you don't get that in a lot of other tech industries and stuff. So that's cool.
Yeah. We have a director of one of the reason in Rochester, the location that we're currently serving in the sprint review call. So it can be intimidating at times, but it's really I guess it's really powerful to see as a Scrum Master for teams to kind of step up and showcase their work and really collaborate with the end users. So
yeah, that's cool. Super important. I want to pivot a little bit just more around learning, because one of the things a lot of times Scrum Masters are either put in that role, or they go through a couple of day training and say, okay, you're a Scrum Master, and it's a lot. But one of the things that I've seen you, obviously you were kind of born, your career was born in Agile, the first role you went into was in Agile. But at the same time, I see you constantly trying to educate yourself via, podcasts, books, articles. Just kind of want to hear your journey. How have you evolved as a Scrum Master, maybe recently, or maybe even 60 to 90 days? What were you like before versus like what's your mindset now, maybe, you know?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think one of the things that I've done really well in the last 60 to 90 days, especially I'm noticing with my current teams is, creating less dependency on me for my team. Even though my team is fairly new to Agile and newly formed, they're nowhere close to mastering the Scrum process. But despite that, what's really neat is I don't find myself needing to jump in to fix things for my team. And in the past, when I've worked with teams, I used to find myself in a situation, and I'm sure a lot of Scrum Masters out there have felt this way at some point in their career, where in the process of being helpful, you kind of create this need for your team to become excessively reliant on you. And over time, what I've noticed is that becomes disempowering for them, and you become the bottleneck. A perfect example that I can think of as a Scrum Master is, I maybe as a Scrum Master, I noticed that, a team discussion is needed, to share the analysis work that was done. And, when you suggest that as a Scrum Master, the team like agrees or maybe nod their head, or someone will say, hey, can you schedule that for us? Like there isn't that ownership from the team member to say, I agree a session to talk through the finding will give us the understanding that we need to do our work better in the next sprint. I'll go ahead and throw something in our calendar to share, what I've learned in the sprint with my team. So then you feel it's necessary, as a Scrum Master to do it on behalf of those shy team members, right? And so you do it once and then twice out of necessity. But over time, two things happen. You create a habit for yourself to always become involved, even when it's not necessary. And then the team also gets used to this behavior and starts to depend on you to do things for them. And don't get me wrong. I still, as a Scrum Master, it's still my role to make sure people get the value they need out of the event. And then until the team is self-organized enough, I need to showcase what a successful daily Scrum or a sprint planning looks like. I'm not saying you don't need to intervene when the situation calls for it, and do what's necessary to help the team or the group move forward toward outcome. It's actually a Scrum Master job to help the team strive a good level of self-management. But if you're not being mindful, which is what I've noticed with myself, because I tend to over nurture, and I tend, over time, I tend to over assume the level of self-management of the team itself. So now I don't do just things for my team. It's the same concept that I'm sure you've heard of too, and I think we've all heard of. Instead of giving someone a fish, teach them how to fish, right? So instead of always being the one to fulfill the role of a facilitator and trying to remove all and any bottlenecks, allow the team to learn by doing something poorly, like let them have a bad daily Scrum.
Absolutely.
So we as a humans, I think, learn when we make mistakes. That's how I learn. I know it's not always nice, but the team takes more ownership of their future actions as they really feel the impact their actions make and what might be the downside of it, right? So over time, I want the team to own the Scrum framework. And sometimes I make them a Scrum Master. Sometimes I go into a daily Scrum and I say, hey, like pick a person to be a facilitator. You guys have seen how daily Scrum how I have, run the daily Scrum in the past. What are the things that we're trying to get out of the session? And they run the Scrum board, and I do it just like once a week. And then we kind of rotate. So I would say, just don't, it's dangerous to make yourself more important than you are. There's a book that I want to recommend to anyone listening. It's called The Coaching Habit, Say Less, Ask More, and Change the Way You Lead Forever. I think when I read that book, it just like really changed my mindset around what it means to be a Scrum Master and a coach. I think we sometimes fall into this trap or ingrained a habit of shipping into like that or slipping into that advice giver and answer fix it mode.
Yeah,
right?
We love giving advices.
Yeah. And so if you want to kind of like tame that urge of always jumping in and being the expert, then you have to start watching yourself and see how quickly you get triggered into wanting to provide the answer. And, so, just staying curious and asking a few additional questions, because we can't really know what the issue is or what's going on with that person just from like the first answer someone gives you. So, that's really what I've learned in the last 60 to 90 days is just like continuously growing myself and, doing something different. Even as a Scrum Master, is you want to continuously experiment and evolve your own style of how you show up to facilitate certain events. So,
yeah. No, I mean, you said so many powerful things there. And I've always believed that, and why I love Agile and the Scrum Master role so much, because it's so much about like your self-discovery, and it's like Scrum Mastery is actually like mastering yourself, because all these things that like all these different habits and the way we show up and the importance that we give to ourselves, not really being able to self-manage. Like if you can't manage yourself, then like how are you going to show up in the team and make it not about you? And literally take your eyes off of you and like look at another individual and be like, hey, I see you as a person. You're not an obstacle. You're not an object. Like I see you as a human being, and I get it. You have your own set of values and your own set of fears, and like the way you said this is maybe there's like an underlying cause or fear, and really knowing how to like help them overcome that. And that's like what a good Scrum Master does. And I think what you just like shared, that's like a testament that you're like saying, hey, yeah, like I'm here to help, but it's not about me. It's really about who you guys are, who you are as a team, and really believing in them. Because also like a lot of times, new Scrum Masters or Agile folks come into an organization, and then it's like, okay, I'm the expert. I'm supposed to like, these people are damaged. These people don't know what to do. And I'm supposed to like,
oh my God,
give them an answer. Versus it's really like, if you're a good coach or a good Scrum Master, you're going there to like, hey, like they're not broken. This is just a new change, new thing that we're going through this. So like, how do we go through this together? Hey, you have the power. You know what to do. Here's the resources. Here's the environment. So I love everything about that. I want to pivot a little bit into, and I think you touched on it a little bit, but like transparency, right? A lot of times when teams are, used to having this like individual contribution, they're just used to working by themselves. And now like Scrum, like big thing is transparency. And I think it's one of the biggest thing that you can have in like an organization, but also an Agile team. So like, how have you helped create transparency in your team? Like, are there any tools, tactics, like mindset? Like, what do you do to like create transparency within the team?
Yeah, I think the big thing about transparency is it should be well understood by the entire team. So there's misconception out there with teams that, just because you have a board, there is automatic transparency. It's like this attitude of, my work is visual. You can look at the board. You can see what tickets are assigned to me. I don't need to bring up the issues or share, vital information to the team. But what I found out is, when you start to ask questions, you find so much stuff that isn't transparent. So to answer your question, how have I created transparency? I think first thing is, like you said, making work visible. In my eyes, if things aren't ticketed, they're not valued. And so this used to be a big challenge for one of my teams. And, I told my team, hey, like, I'm not trying to make a ticket out of everything, but you did a lot of good stuff. It seems that, maybe you spent 2 days trying to help out this like emergency situation on the side. We just need to know what that is as a team. It's not about, being obsessive. It's about capturing those things so that we know what we can achieve over the sprint. So first, just really helping the team understand what we're trying to get out of by visualizing our work, right? What is the whole point behind transparency? I have a data scientist in my team, and we don't always have work defined for him during like the actual planning due to the nature of his work. Like there are different data products models that need monitoring like throughout the day, and it usually occurs in the background. So, based on like the urgency of thing, and he kind of brings in work into the sprint. And one of the things that I used to struggle with in the beginning was he would bring in work to the sprint without like any estimation or discussion with like the rest of the team. And so, I had to encourage this person and send a reminder multiple days in a row until eventually he could see how his lack of transparency hurt the team from like not even being able to finish the sprint, right? And so sometimes teams have to live the consequences of not having enough transparency and learn from it. So you really want to make sure the teams understand what it means to be transparent, like I said, right? And work with them to help them understand maybe how their current situation or behavior doesn't live up to maybe the level of transparency that the team needs in their work, right? So that's super important. And other thing that I like to do is when I'm working with teams to bring like that more transparency is I help create a board that can actually provide valuable information to others. So sometimes a team will have a very generic board that's not meaningful to their work at all. And so as I start to learn about the team's process, I come to find out if the visual board is of any good use and whether it allows to highlight tasks that are blocked where the team isn't maybe making any progress, right? And
so do you do that like physically in the Jira board? Like, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so I will hold maybe during retro, I ask my team, hey, since maybe our setup, our current board doesn't reflect our definition of done and the different stages that the item goes through before it can be marked done, right? Do you guys agree? I want to make some recommendation to bring transparency in our board. Are you guys kind of like open to experimenting and changing things up a bit? And so, every team has a different workflow because of the specific product they're building or the organization, they're in and their own definition of done. So,
gotcha.
When I started with my current teams, they had 3 columns: active, in progress, and done.
Oh, wow.
And so when we would come to conduct a daily scrum, it was just really hard to know the progress. Like, is it still in development? Like, what about testing? I could see that the team wasn't collaborating around the remaining work to get done since almost every item in our sprint were just glued to this one column in progress for like that entire sprint, right?
Wow.
So, so then I first check in with the team to make sure they really understand the intent behind why I'm recommending maybe a change, right? I'm not saying that like what they had in place isn't effective. I really want them to understand. So I sit with them and say, hey team, what are the different stages that a product backlog item in our sprint backlog must go through to get it done? And I take that information and visually help the team represent in their workflow on the Scrum board.
Gotcha.
And what I've seen is the visualization of different stages gives the team member, some valuable insight into the development team's work that they never had before. They start to look for stages in their workflow that are like bottlenecks. And it also allows me as a Scrum Master to see a pattern of a product backlog getting stuck in a certain column, and how can I maybe, work through, that problem, as we learn about certain, blockers, right? And so what I've learned as a after a few sprints, it was taking average of 3 days for a user story to move from encoding to be available in testing environment due to the fact that we were waiting on another team outside of us to make the views available in that environment where it needed to be tested, right? So, bringing that kind of transparency in the team's workflow made it clear that someone in our team needed access to push our own changes, right?
Wow.
As a Scrum Master, it's just like my responsibility to ensure that the team continuously updates the sprint backlog to reflect the changes that need to take place in the sprint. But before that can happen, do we have a visual, view of our workflow, and do we know where things are really getting stuck, right? And what can I do to help bring changes so that we can move forward?
No, I do want to highlight 2 main important things that you brought up. I think one was there could be transparency, like there is transparency. A lot of companies think so, but maybe not to a level or not in a way that helps teams move forward.
Yep.
And then the other one that you mentioned, it's not about even if there are things that the teams have in place, just really educating them. So you're not shoving and pushing, you're not a dictator, you're not saying, hey, like do this or do that, but you're really helping them come up with their own ways in a way, and saying, hey, I see what you're doing here and that provides value, but here is also by not having this in place, here's what's causing us, or here's the problem that's causing, right? And I think that's super important because I remember being part of teams and teams taking work from other leadership just because they were used to doing that in the past. Somebody comes and this leader, I'm not saying that they were in a wrong place, but they also didn't understand when a team is committed to a certain amount of work in a common sprint, that's their focus. And anything else that somebody asks them to come look up something, or, hey, can you check this, or can you look this up for me, that derails the focus and the commitment, right? And so
and you have to be the observer of those little extra things on the side that show up and derail a sprint, right? And so if there is a lack of transparency from this person or a team member on bringing forth what that thing on the side is, you have to, as a Scrum Master, willing to call out for things that aren't unspoken, because sometimes these team members, they're just afraid.
They don't know how to say no either.
They don't know how to say it. Yep. So
as someone who's higher in hierarchy than me came to ask me to do things, how can I say no, right? And I totally get that. And I remember telling one of my team members, how about you don't say no? Because I know you're you don't want to say no to this person because you have certain respect. How about you just go and tell him or her, hey, can you talk to, Pavitra and this person, the product owner, and see if this is part of the sprint work that we're committed to, and if it takes a higher priority, we can definitely have a conversation, right? And so obviously it wasn't right away, but over time then is a little bit more courage, and them knowing they don't have to be the one to say no to this person. So
and you're also setting an example on the right way to address a request without necessarily saying that we're not going to get to it. You're helping the leader also understand, hey, there's a process that the team needs to follow in order for them to really provide value at the end of the iteration. So in order for them to do that, here's what the team needs, right? And so when you do that, you're also empowering the team at some point to hopefully
do that on
their own, right?
Cool. Yeah, good stuff there. Next thing I want to talk about is, every team that I've been part of, and I'm sure you have too, there's always one person that questions everything, and these are the people that make you stronger, I believe, and help you see things differently. So you need these people too, but how do you handle when there's a difficult team member? Because I think this is a lot of Scrum Masters fear. It's they come into an organization and they're resistant from certain people in the team, in the organization, whatever it is. Because it's not when somebody disvalues what you're doing, or no, we don't do that, or we don't want to do that. It's hard. So how have you had those situations where you've had a difficult team member? If so, how have you handled that?
Yeah, I don't necessarily think that someone is a difficult team member per se. Maybe they have a conflicting personality based on their own experiences and mindset around maybe what they believe to be is the right way to engage with the work that's in front of them, right? But personally, the difficult person in my team is someone who's silent and doesn't speak up or engage with the problem on hand. It's like pulling teeth, right? So when I'm working with someone who is disengaged, which I sometimes put them in that bucket of they are a difficult team member because it's hindering.
Yes, we do. Teams. We like to put people in boxes.
When I'm working with those type of team members, what I've come to find out is there's usually a fear behind their disengaged behavior. Fear that if I say something, nothing good is going to happen, or maybe something bad is going to happen. And sometimes it's from the mindset of, like, I don't want to come across as I'm a fool in some shape or form. I don't want to put my job at risk. I'm embarrassed or nervous about, being wrong. And so, perhaps sometimes like this person, what I found out from, working with my team on a one-on-one basis is the person, questioned maybe acceptance criteria in the past because they didn't think it was specific enough. And for whatever reason, maybe there were some people who just didn't have, people skills, and they were shut down, right?
Yeah.
And so from that point forward, this person has been hesitant to ask questions, even when they see that the criteria is vague or lacks, sufficient details, right? And so my goal is I want to try to figure out what habits, whether it's somebody who does speak a lot and overpowers the room by always having something to say, or somebody who is disengaged, what habits are formed that are in this person's way to be a great team member? What habits or emotional buildup has the person formed that is making, work more complicated to get done, whether it's due to lack of participation, not speaking opinions, not sharing ideas or blockers. And so, you want to go at it from an angle of, hey, I noticed there is some hesitancy on your part to share information. That could be vital and could help the team to collaborate better, right? Or maybe allow for things to surface so that we could improve as a team. I want to support you better so that we as a team are, living the Scrum values, and I help state what those are. Transparency is critical in the team's ability to success. What do you think is your biggest hurdle for you? And like, what can we put into place that will surface these blockers for it to flow? And so you really want to build that one-on-one relationship and coach them a little to find out what is getting in the way of them being a better team member, right? So what is that internal dialogue? And the biggest thing is you have to be willing to be open to the experience of that person without any judgment or bias. And then it usually takes a while to find out the root cause of why someone is showing up the way they are, which is creating maybe disturbances and hindering the team's growth. And sometimes they're not even aware of these behaviors and how they're impacting the group when we come together. And so, I do my absolute best to work with this person to figure out what is the most efficient way, and also with that respect to this person's values and the style he or she likes to work on, right? And then kind of bridge that gap for them. So,
No, I love everything about that. And I love how you said it's not a difficult team member. It's just somebody, maybe I'll change that question for the future. I like that. And it's very real, right? I mean, it's all comes from fear-based and certain need not met, or like maybe they were an engaging person and they were shut down multiple times in the past. And it could be in a work environment. It could also just be in life. Yeah. We all come with our own baggages and our own set of wounds and traumas and all these different things. So, I think just because we're in a professional world, it's easy to think that we can overlook those, or we can, like somebody, you should just like put a good face and like do good work or whatever. But it's like, man, like it's called being human beings, and we all have that no matter what, and it's going to show up in our professional career one way or another. And I think that's what I love about agility. It's like, I feel like in just a traditional corporate environment, a lot of these things were like shut down, and it was like suck up and like go do what you need to do because you're at work or whatever. But like here, like that's why, this whole shift in mindset really helps you to be a coach, be a human also to another human being, and saying, hey, like, I get it. I get it that like you're going through this. I get it that there was a resistance built around this, and I get it that somebody hurt you when you said this and this. But like how can we move forward? And just really being with that person and helping them overcome that. It's like so powerful because it's not going to only help them like excel at their work, but also like be a better person in life and like just have a better life overall, probably just because like somebody cared and listened and like helped them go through this hurdle that it was killing them for a very long time, probably.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Yes.
Yeah.
So important.
Yeah. The next thing I want to talk about, obviously, a big part of being a Scrum Master is also facilitation. Obviously, you're facilitating a lot of the Scrum events in the beginning, especially. I mean, if the team is getting to a good groove, maybe not, maybe you're doing the other things as more. But either way, like being a facilitator is a huge part of the role. What have you done to be an effective facilitator? Because there's like running meetings and like doing stuff, and there's like actually being a good facilitator.
Yeah. I think just experimenting with different ways to go about the same thing. I firmly believe our style and personality obviously plays an important role in our ability to, effectively facilitate. However, as a Scrum Master, you shouldn't just subscribe to one way of facilitating team events. Yeah. So just like, you're advocating to the team that, hey, there is more than one way to achieve the same outcome. You also have to believe that there is more than one way to hold, for example, a daily Scrum. So, if your team is still asking the same 3 questions, what did I work on yesterday? What am I working on today? What is blocking my work? Then I believe you're just going through the motions, and most likely so is your team. So for me, if I notice that I'm not getting the team to collaborate during daily Scrum, I'm not afraid to change things up in order to meet the outcome. I'll give an example. Sometimes, team members will say, and, I'm sure when you've been a Scrum Master in the past, you've noticed the same type of, patterns. I'm working on this XYZ ticket. It will get done before the sprint ends. No blockers. So, to avoid this kind of update, I tell my team, hey, rather than focusing on what's being worked on, although that's also super important, let's try to answer these questions instead. Like, what is the risk to getting our work completed? What's in our way right now that the team can quickly figure out how to remove? Or questions like, what is the remaining work to get the story done? Can you do it? And if not, how do you get the most people working on this story so then it will be done? So sometimes I'll go into like a daily Scrum and be like, hey team, today instead of everyone giving updates on their work, I want to suggest, trying a practice that comes from, Kanban philosophy called like walking the board. And we'll start with items that are closest to, getting done and walk the board toward the, what has just been started. And I asked, what can we finish today? I want the team to obviously self-organize to get it done. And then once the team has a plan to deliver something today, then we'll move on and address the rest of the items in progress, right? And so, this allows for team members to have urgency towards bringing each items that are in this whip to completion, which is the goal of the sprint. And the reason for daily Scrum is for the team to analyze their progress through the current sprint, and as the team make adjustments as needed. So keeping that outcome in mind, whatever the Scrum event is, I'm willing to show up differently, shift the questions, assign even a team member to be the facilitator instead of me. Whatever is going to bring the team together at that moment. As a facilitator, you have to create an environment for the team to perform at their best. And if you're not experimenting with your techniques and, doing what's necessary to provide, the setting that's needed where, the team can reflect, they can discuss and, have fun. I just don't think you're growing as a Scrum Master or caring enough to bring the group together.
No, super important. I think questioning the ways or certain tools that you even use, right? Because I mean, the way you could facilitate in person versus the way you can facilitate remote, that just drastically changes. And I'm glad there are certain tools that you can have in place to create that similar kind of engagement. But at the same time, like you have to be willing to experiment and if you're teaching the team to experiment and you as a Scrum Master are not experimenting, then like, what are you teaching? So I totally love that. Yeah. I want to talk about someone's or people's favorite topic a lot of times is it's retrospective, especially if you're an Agile, especially you're a coach, and in Agile, retrospectives are super, super important. Even though there are times that teams and people within the organizations don't think that they are fun, just because it can get boring if you're not facilitating it correctly or have a certain mindset or know how to engage people properly. So I want to hear from you. What do you do, or how do you make some of your retros fun, engaging, and effective? Because I remember before I was a Scrum Master, being a business analyst and being part of a retrospective and just really not understanding. And I hated it then. Because I just didn't know. And I'm like, oh, I don't know what we can improve. I don't know what went wrong or right, because I wasn't really thinking about it during the sprint. And then, but then
it's all the same thing,
Yeah. And then I remember becoming a Scrum Master and then like having to facilitate, and it was like tables turn, and I feel people's pain, and I get it, because like maybe I didn't have a good Scrum Master that like made it engaging or helped us think a different way on the way that they facilitate retrospectives. So definitely want to hear from you. What do you do to make them fun and effective and engaging?
Yeah. I've been there as well. Like you said, being a team member, who's on the other side of the table, and as a business analyst, trying to participate and not have things to say, because my work just wasn't naturally as, I wasn't as collaborative as with my teams at the time, that being my first role. And I just didn't know what to share or what so I totally understand. And I've been on the other side where it's like, now I got to get these same people to, collaborate and,
people like us that were on the other side. Yeah.
Yep. So I think first thing, retros are all about, again, providing that space for the team to look at things through different angles and perspectives, so there can be new insight, right? So, based on how the team's interaction has been the previous 2 weeks, maybe the impediments that they ran into, it's just something that keeps coming over and over during the sprint, right? So as a Scrum Master, I need to reflect and prepare what is the best way to engage the group is. I'm a big proponent of letting teams have fun together. If you make things fun, people connect on a deeper level. And so to make retros fun, I experiment with something different each sprint. I've done retros
around like the format you experiment.
Yep. Yeah. So I've done retros around Agile values. It's such a good way for the team to reflect on how the Agile values are showing up in the team's daily work, and just kind of remind each other of the values that they display throughout that week, right? So I tell the team. I
like that.
Yeah, it's called Agile Values. Cheer up. I tell the team, hey, it's okay if we haven't embodied these values yet. This is a great opportunity to see how the team's where the team comfort level lies currently. Let's talk about how individual and interactions were amplified or suppressed during the sprint. And based on our discussion and reflection during the sprint, we'll walk out of here with some actions to ensure the value is well represented in the work that we're doing, right?
Yeah.
So, and then the other times, my retros are just around like team building activities. Since, I mentioned the teams that I'm working with are in the very like early stage of that team development, I've been doing a lot of like team building retros. And I want to kind of share this like really neat experience that I had with my team. I did this activity where I asked, and this was just for fun again. I had no like really agenda other than saying like, hey, I want the team to have fun and coexist as a team. And so I did this activity where I asked everyone to, roll a dice using an online tool. And depending on the number of the people, depending on the number that the people got, they had to choose a corresponding color. So one was green, 2 red, and so on. But here's where it gets fun. So each person had different questions for their number that they had to type the answer into a visual board that we use, so into a column. and guess what the question is along with who the answer is from. And
Aww.
then and so the questions varied from, what is one thing you love about your job? What is your favorite book or movie? Favorite way to, de-stress? Or a goal that you're working on, and a number of things that allow a team to not only like have fun as a team, but also see how much they really know about the person they see and talk on a daily basis. And honestly, like I wasn't expecting it to go so well, but what I got to see in that moment was like team members who were like laughing, making jokes, enjoying being around one another. And, what I'm talking about here is not like laughing as because someone said something funny. It's about laughing as a form of like team bonding and like group coordination. And what I've noticed, because I'm just a naturally very positive, happy person, I always smile. It's like, laughter, it's a means to like warm a room and create this sense of connection and trust. And I think in that moment, not just me, but the whole team could see the spark and so much chemistry within the team where, no one felt judged. They felt relaxed, safe, and a realization that they can afford to let their protective guard down and trust each other to share things outside of work.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. So, I would say use retrospective to kind of unlock those, these benefits that I just talked about of laughter in your team. Figure out what's missing in like the team's ability to bond and create this stress-free, relaxed environment, for them to really be themselves. Like when I first, joined this team, like people were just so serious, and like it was so hard for me to just get them to say something in during the meetings. And then now we got into this point where it's like they almost don't take me seriously, and they're just like having fun. And it just and sometimes they say like we're so sorry, like we're not. I'm like, I'd rather have a team that is like collaborating, having fun, having a good time, and then people that are too serious and don't know how to even communicate, right? So
Wow. No, thanks for sharing that. That's beautiful. I mean, it made me think, because I haven't been in a role for some time, and I used to love that. Like obviously I didn't get an opportunity to do remote stuff, but I used to do something similar. It was a candy game. We got like a bunch of M&Ms or whatever, and we like used to go eat, and then everybody passed around an M&M, and whatever color that you had was the question. There was a question with that. So it sounds very similar, but like I'm glad that there's something remote that you can do to create that. I mean, that's and I love the fact that a lot of times people think like retrospective has to be like this. You have to address these 3 questions, and being a good Scrum Master, it's about like seeing the pulses of the team and like, okay, last 2 weeks or last couple of sprints, I've noticed that the teams are just really lacking the values, Scrum values. So how can I do a retrospective around that? So one is it's a teaching point. 2 is it's like something different. It's fun. And I love that. And I don't think a lot of Scrum Master, maybe they do, maybe they don't. I don't know. But like when I was a Scrum Master, I definitely didn't think like that. So I'm learning something from you right now. That's awesome. I'll have to teach this to some of my some of the other folks that I coach, because that's really beautiful. That's really beautiful.
And find something like, for people that are listening, find something that works for your team and stick to it. Like if you take this same exact retro format that I just talked about and implement it with your team, like I won't guarantee that you'll have the same effect. Like people might find it really like goofy or not as valuable because it's not work related, right? So based on the personalities, it may help people to loosen up a little bit, which is needed in teams, like and just kind of learn to coexist as a team. And people, like I said, may find it completely waste of time. But again, don't be afraid to try new ways to let the team engage better. And that's the environment that you are striving to create, I think, within that like retro, setting.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a good activity for the teams to really discover themselves and peel in a certain way too. Like I remember one of the Agile coaches that I used to work with, he said, a lot of times people like think they have to be in a sitting environment in a room to do a retrospective. He said, this is what I saw in the team. So I just told two people, like I just paired them up and told them to go on a walk. And I gave each of them a question, and it was an uncomfortable question, like, what are your deepest fear, or what are this and what are that? And then
I love that.
two people just kind of go on a walk and they just talk to each other about some of these things. And maybe you don't want to do that when the team is just like forming, but like, again, like knowing, being a good Scrum Master is like feeling the pulses. Where is my team at? What stage are they? Like, are they in a storming phase where they now need to go to a norming phase, so that, we need to talk about some of these things. We need to be okay with each other's indifferences and like learn how to come together and work together. Or is it we are a performing stage and we just need a little bit of an extra push to, get to another stage, whatever it is. So,
and to that point, like you said, if people like know where the team's at, right? So if people are in that like norming or forming stage, when you're first facilitating these, events and experimenting to get the team together, get the team to just like, build this chemistry, make sure to pull people in. Like there are tendencies on a lot of teams to have a, couple strong voices and couple that are more on the quiet side, which again, is completely normal. So, as a Scrum Master, you want to tune into that and then pull those particular individuals and say, hey, XYZ, what do you think about this? So you want to get them to comfortable to, having some input in these type of discussions as a team. So
Yeah. I mean, I'm loving this conversation. I feel like we can chat all day, but I know I got to be mindful of your time as well. Maybe I'll just ask you one last question and we can kind of wrap it up. What advice do you have for a new Scrum Master, or maybe they're looking for a Scrum Master role, or just like studying it up, or they are a new Scrum Master in a team and they're going for their first role? What are some couple of things, few tips that you would recommend for them to really like be a good Scrum Master, be a good coach? Like what recommendations would you have, or what advice?
My advice would be to don't overthink or overdo it. Because I've been there. I think when you're new in your craft, we have tendencies to like over nurture something or someone because we want to prove to others. And then I think part of it is also we want to prove to ourselves that we're good at it. And, it's obviously coming from a, right intention. We want to add value. There's nothing wrong with that. But I've been with organizations and teams, where the process they had in place seemed to be against like the Agile principles in every way. I've noticed anti-patterns with the Scrum events, the way the work was assigned, product owner creating tasks for the team, team estimating in hours, right? Daily standards were just about providing updates only on the ticket that the person is assigned to, and not about, creating a plan for the day and talking about the progress towards the sprint goal, right? And so naturally, my first thought when I see that in a team, as a new Scrum Master, when I go in is, oh my God, they're doing, everything wrong and, contradictory to what the Scrum guy says. And you can kind of freak out a little bit, right? And then you want to try to change everything. But from my learning and in my opinion, that only hurts the team. Not only will the team get overwhelmed, but they will be discouraged to, progress forward. So, instead, you want to try to secure a handful of small wins that can carry you through that like initial learning period and build social capital, so then you can influence things at a greater level at a later time. So I think what helped me to become a good Scrum Master in my first role is I didn't go in and, try to change everything. I feel like I couldn't. So instead, my initial goal was to learn about the teammates' interests and, their aspirations and, share mine in the process, like find out what makes the other person tick, what makes him or her happy, like what energizes them at work, right? And why.
Right.
Learn about where the person comes from. I strongly believe in like, building a very like close relationship with my teammates. When I first join any new teams, I have one-on-one with like every person in the team, right? You want to learn about that person as much as you can. And you want to try to figure out, based on where this person's at, can I help them, right? And how, what would that look like? So, I just, observe people's interactions during like meetings and notice, deviations from like the Scrum guide and like how that's affecting the team. And I was much more effective when I started to be curious and ask questions about, what is going on, and, trying to get a good grasp on what the team is struggling with. And then asking the team's permission to like offer observation and stories from your experience, right? And also to that, I think, the Agile principle says simplicity is the art of like maximizing the work not done, right? So I think that doesn't just apply to like developers or engineers and the product that the team is building. The art of facilitation is all about, simplifying conversation. You don't have to get fancy with the format or get too creative. Sometimes I think we overdo things.
Overcomplicate things.
So figure out how to have the simplest conversation possible that could work around a problem or like an issue that the team wants to work on, right? And then just go for that one adaptation to the process and help the team to see the value behind it, right? So I would say those are a few of my advices to a new Scrum Master, who may be in their first role.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a good advice because, and I tell this to people, like I coach too, it's like when you go in at a role, you don't have to like go tomorrow and like try to do all this change. And that's not the goal either. You want to go and like see where are the gaps. And a lot of times I've noticed that industries don't know how to onboard a Scrum Master properly, right? And so there are some companies, I'm not saying all, but like there are a number of companies that don't know how to onboard people properly. So what that really means is maybe they're like just thrown into things and they're expected to make all these changes. And I think as an Agile expert and someone who like embodies agility, I think you almost have to like ask for a permission from the team and from the organization saying, hey, do you mind if I just observe the team for next few sprints and just really see where the gaps are at? I don't want to like, I'm not here to like fix and change everything. I want to see what's working. If it's working, let's keep it. If it's not working, then as a team, let's come up with an action plan. Yeah, Agile might say this. Yeah, Scrum might say this. If there's a meeting certain hours, like Scrum might say, I can have it for this many hours. But if that's what if the team doesn't need that, then why do you need to have that, right? And so, I mean, totally, like, you can go everything that a Scrum guide says, but like, you might fail miserably. So it's really about, like you said, feeling the pulses and seeing what does that team actually need. And you need time to gather data. And so go to your new role as a Scrum Master and don't think you have to like know everything the first day, first week, even a first month and try to fix everything. You should just like see the pulses, like you said, and go based on that and come up with those plans together with the team on whatever gaps that needs to be addressed versus like having to go in and like fix things, because then again, you're coming from that command and control. If you're going in blindly and said, oh, you guys are like doing this horribly, here's what you should do, right? So
and if when you have those one-on-one, maybe directly ask the team members, right? I found that to be more effective than me suggesting like an idea. Ask them like, what do you think about the current team, dynamic? Like, what is something that you see that the team is struggling with? And would you suggest, like, right?
So important. Because they've been in there, they know, versus you coming in like as an outsider and haven't really seen the team together for that long. I love that. I love that. Well, this was a very, very fun conversation. Thank you again for coming on the podcast. I'm sure a lot of people would find a lot of value. Even I learned so much from you because I know, like I said, I haven't been in the role, and you've been in the grind. So yeah, thanks so much. I had a blast, and I learned a lot, and I hope it's the same for a lot of folks out there. With that, we'll see you guys on the next podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.